Ishak and Tabari. Suddenly an unseen voice called out her name. It said, "Where is so-and-so?" She said, "Here I am." "Good heavens," I cried, "what is wrong?" She said, "I am going to be killed because of something I did." She was taken away and beheaded. Aisha used to say, "I shall never forget my wonder at her good spirits, even when she knew she would be killed."
The witness of the Jews continues to be remarkable.
Tabari. Thabit said, "O Allah's messenger, Zabir, who was Abu ar-Rahman, did me a favor sparing my life, and I owed him a debt of gratitude. I wish to repay him for it. Grant me his life." The Prophet said, "It is yours."
The source of this hadith wants to make sure Muslims don't equate this act of mercy with the Prophet being soft on Jews. That's why he said that this man's real name was slave to Muhammad's first god, ar-Rahman.
Ishak. So Thabit went to him, and Zabir said, "Why do this? I'll be an old man without my family and children." Thabit asked Muhammad for his family, and he said, "His wife and children are yours." But Zabir said, "Without my property, how will we survive?" So Thabit asked the Prophet for Zabir's wealth, and it was given to him. Thabit went to Zabir and announced that he had been given all of his property. Zabir said, "Thabit, you are two-faced. What has happened to Azad? He has been beheaded. How about Huyay? He has been killed. How fares Azal? He has been slain. How about the rest of the Qurayza men?" Thabit said, "They have all gone to their death." Zabir said, "Then for the sake of the favor I once did for you, there is no good in living any more." So Thabit brought him forward, and they struck off his head. When what he said was reported to Abu Bakr, he replied, "He will soon meet his dear ones in the fires of hell, and there they will dwell forever."
Which is the exact place everyone who speaks out on behalf of this demented religion deserves to go. When anyone, including the President of the United States, calls Islam a noble, peace-loving religion and says that we are not at war with Islam, they deserve the same fate. In the most tortured words ever uttered in the name of religion, we find in Tabari,
"The messenger of Allah commanded that all of the Jewish men and boys who had reached puberty should be beheaded. Then the Prophet divided the wealth, wives and children of the Banu Qurayza Jews among the Muslims." Ishak. When their wrists were bound with cords, the apostle was a sea of generosity to us.
It's hard to imagine evil this dark, and this is not an isolated incident. Mohammed led 75 terrorist raids. Mohammed was Islam's lone prophet, its founder, its paradigm, Allah's only human conduit, its lone voice. And yet he was this despicable. Whether you are a Muslim or a Christian, a Hindu or an atheist, for you to tolerate Islam in your presence is a grotesque sin. Then, confirming that he was a terrorist and a pirate, not a messenger or a prophet, Muhammad's first biographer said of him,
Ishak. Then the apostle divided the property, wives and children of the Qurayza among the Muslims. Allah's messenger took his fifth of the booty. He made known on that day the extra shares for horses and their riders, giving the horse 2 shares and the rider 1. A Muslim without a horse got 1 share of the spoil. It was the first booty in which lots were cast.
Why lots, you may be wondering? Casting lots is a gambling game, one expressly forbidden by Islam. The reason is twofold. First, the religion of Islam was a joke to these fellows. They simply used it as a tool to justify their disgusting behavior. The first Muslims were less religious than Hitler's SS. Second, the mercenaries needed a picking order in which to draft Jewish homes, property, businesses, women, and children. Mohammed didn't want them squabbling. Some sex slaves were prettier than others. In the name of full disclosure, here's the report of Islam's first historian.
Tabari. On that day Muhammad made known the shares of the horsemen and the shares of the foot soldiers, and he deducted from these shares his fifth. A horseman received 3 shares, 2 shares for the horse and 1 for its rider. A foot soldier received 1 share. The cavalry at the battle with the Qurayza numbered 36 horses. It was the first booty in which shares were allotted to them. According to this example, or Sunnah, the procedure of the Messenger of Allah in the divisions of booty became a precedent, which was followed in subsequent raids.
Every Islamic apologist could cry out for 1,000 years and not undo the damage done by Mohammed and his militants. We put ourselves, our men, women, and children, into harm's way when we allow Islam to masquerade as a noble religion. Fundamental Islam is no different than fundamental Nazism. These crimes must not go unpunished. As further evidence that militant Islam is fundamental Islam, and that the Islam of Mohammed was built upon the slave trade, we find in Tabari.
Then the Messenger of Allah sent Sa'd bin Zayed with some of the Qurayza captives to Najd, and in exchange for them he purchased horses and arms.
And in exchange for them, people, women, and children that he had enslaved, he purchased horses and arms. Nothing could be more clear. Hitler financed his war machine on booty he stole from the Jews too. In slave labor camps, he forced Jews to work without pay, building planes, tanks, and bombs. Mohammed set the precedent, funding his war effort on the flesh and property of Jews. These men and their methods were identical, and one day, in the not-too-distant future, this misguided doctrine will be unleashed on a world comprised of 6 billion souls. Replete with nuclear and biological weapons, 1 billion people will perish. The reason Allah approved rape, involuntary sex with prisoners, in the 33rd surah was because Mohammed was about to indulge.
Tabari. The Prophet selected for himself among the Jewish women of the Qurayza Rayhanah bint Ammar. She became his concubine. When he predeceased her, she was still in his possession. When the Messenger of Allah took her as a captive, she showed herself averse to Islam and insisted on Judaism.
Imagine the horror of being the sex slave of a man who had murdered your father and your brothers. Imagine being forced to have sex with a man who had given your mother up to be raped and had sold your sisters into slavery so that he could buy swords, so that he could torment others. It's chilling. Perversity on an unimaginable scale. Mohammed may well have been the most vile human to have ever lived. The first to chronicle the Prophet's revolting life explains.
Ishaq, the apostle,
taking first dibs,
chose one of the Jewish women for himself. Her name was Rayhanah. She remained with him until she died, in his power. The apostle proposed to marry her and put the veil on her, but she said, "Leave me under your power, for that will be easier." She showed a repugnance towards Islam when she was captured.
Mohammed raped Rayhanah after killing, enslaving, and plundering her family. If you want to understand the doctrine of submission, put yourself in her sandals and gaze deeply into the eyes of the man who is abusing her.